many, many years ago. It feels like a lifetime ago. Um, I had this dream, and it was pretty. It was a pretty scary, terrifying dream. Picture, if you will, total darkness. You know, being bathed in total darkness, having just kind of waking up to everything, and there was like screaming and shouting and shouting in foreign languages, French and German, and well, what I thought was German, and what I could think would be Asian or Vietnamese, and of course in English, and just crying and screaming and total agony and total fear. The squealing of truck springs, rusted truck springs, the sound metal makes, or tinfoil when you rip it apart. Vehicles being blasted apart, and machinery, and kind of waking up like coming into a very fog-like atmosphere, seeing the lights in the distance, firelight from things exploding and bombs being dropped and planes going overhead that you couldn't quite see, but you could make out the black silhouette, and maybe you would see a twinkle off of one of the beacon lights on the plane. It was just pretty scary, So, coming to in the dream, I'm just kind of like lying, almost pretty much face down, and being pulled back, kind of like looking up, from the grass, from the tall grass, up into all this smoke and debris and just carnal madness that was going on. Occasionally someone would run by on fire, going towards the blast areas and stuff. It was pretty scary. The dream didn't last too long, maybe a couple of minutes. Just like getting up and walking forward into the commotion, trying to see what was going on, and seeing people explode, and parts of bodies fly off and stuff, and then eventually pick up running. And keep in mind, it's from dream perspective, it was all POV, point of view shot, pretty much. Running through the thick smoke, tearing back grass to move further, clawing through the grass, and it's mixed with smoke and heat, and it was pretty terrifying. And it went on for a bit like that, and then I heard what would seem like Richard Crenna with the whole "John, behind you" kind of thing, and then followed by the "John, get out of here" kind of cut from Rambo 3. It was really weird and strange, but my character in the dream turned around, and there was like an enemy fighter approaching, bayonet striking outward, coming towards my stomach, and I could see like my hands go up, but they weren't my hands, they were Rambo's hands. Unfortunately, I don't know how it ended, because I woke up. Fortunately, I should say, I woke up, because it was pretty scary. When I was younger, I had a lot of issues with sleep apnea. I still do here and there, but sometimes it would cause me to have really terrifying dreams, waking up not being able to breathe and stuff. So it was pretty crazy. And then, around that time, I heard, I was keeping up tabs on Rambo 4. I was in Rambo mode, I guess, and coming across that whole thing with Robert Rodriguez wanting to do his more close to home Rambo 4. Very nostalgic, very cool, and very professional. And, I kind of, it sparked my interest, maybe I could write a fan script, because I was doing a lot of fan scripts at that time. I was living alone and writing a lot like that. And I wrote a treatment for a Rambo 4. It was scripted, but it was scripted in handbooks, pretty much. Like pen on paper. And it pretty much opened up with that dream. I accentuate on it a little bit, made it a little bit more interesting, and put a little bit more of an intro to it, but whatever. I was, doing that, and I just kind of like wanted to write a Rambo 4, like, it was I would say very spur of the moment, and I won't say I jumped to conclusions, but man, what's that word I want to use? Okay, hopefully we'll come back to that word. But I was just kind of like really being spontaneous about it. It wasn't even an out of the hat situation. It was just like, okay, well, I'm going to write this starting now with, let's just see what happens. And anyway, to make a long story short, if you go into the last couple of videos, you'll hear all about that. But later on, I had a kind of a reoccurring dream. It wasn't the same dream, but it was a little bit different. It was probably around the time I read First Blood, like one of the last times since the review, so it's been about, I'd say, somewhere around 10 years. And I started having dreams about the cave painting scene where Rambo's a little boy with the cave paintings and being beaten by his dad. Something, relatable and terrifying, also life at home growing up. And then, I can't really say the bow and arrow scene from the book, but something kind of similar. But anyway, I started writing down these ideas because I was like, you know what, maybe I'll write a more serious version of Rambo 4. Something like, because like I said, it was very much, in the moment kind of writing. I think I had like the whole premise down within an hour, like less than it would take you to read. I pretty much had, it was just a quick, to the point action film, more or less. But, I would have these dreams periodically, and eventually I ended up trying to put them in order. And so I thought up some weird stuff, and I had different scenes, like, Rambo deciding to go to war, Rambo going off to war, Rambo making friends in the war, Rambo doing his training in the war, Rambo, not, I won't say halo jumping, but, certain parts came in later on. And yeah, just some really cool stuff, like, it was kind of more fragmented in style, I should say. But, it just had a lot of bigger things, but the way they would have been cut in movie form were like a minute or 2-minute scenes max, It was very sporadic, almost like you were in Rambo's memory,